Hi guys, I'm Dan, this is Kai. We are the directors at Crescent Mortgages, and today we're going to be explaining how a bank decides if they're going to give you a mortgage. So whether you're remortgaging your existing property or purchasing a new property, pretty much every lender will go through a very similar process before they agree to give you the mortgage. So this video will help you prepare and ensure that you give yourself the best possible chance of getting your mortgage agreed. Let's jump into it. So to keep it simple, there are generally three key hurdles that you'll need to jump before the lender agrees the mortgage. So before we get to those, just a little bit of an intro. So before any mortgage application, we as a broker will run the relevant checks to be as confident as we can that you are going to get the mortgage. So before we've even submitted the initial application, we will run checks, run affordability calculators, check criteria so that we can be as confident as we can be, but it is ultimately subject to the lender's assessment, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah, we're effectively qualifying, if you will, making sure that you can get it so it's not a waste of your time.
Yeah, exactly. So throughout the process, whilst we're jumping these hurdles, we as your broker will be kind of overseeing them, liaising with the lender, answering questions, going back and forth to try and make sure that everything gets resolved as we go. But ultimately, the lender has to do their own assessment before they can make any final decisions. So, I say no particular order, but actually this does always come first, doesn't it? So, number one of the three hurdles is?
The credit check. So this will be the lender's system trying to accept you effectively, or getting through the computer. So once you put your information in, it will run a credit check. It will look at your previous history of repaying credit, and it will do a system check, and it will say generally yes or no. And that is it really. There isn't a lot more you can do. Each lender will have a slightly different system on its thresholds for yes or no, but that is the check you have to get through first and foremost. And
I guess that's one of the parts of the process that we can't check beforehand. There's no way we can check a lender's criteria. Well, within reason, if you've clearly had credit problems that you're aware of, we can obviously make sure that we do kind of rule out any lenders that will definitely be a no. But if they're just running a credit check on you to meet their minimum score, you won't know for sure until they've run that credit check. So that's number one. That's the first thing we'll do as part of the initial application. Once you pass the credit check, we then fully submit the application, and that's when the actual assessment starts, isn't it?
Yes.
Just before we jump onto that, just remember that if you don't pass the lender's credit check, as I think Kai just touched on, that is the end of the road with that lender. Normally there's no appeal. If it's all done by a computer, if you fail the credit check, that's the end of the road with that lender. At that point, as your broker, we would normally advise that we see your credit file, if we haven't already, to just ascertain if there's any kind of hidden issues that you weren't aware of before we then start to make a backup plan. But just because you failed with one lender doesn't mean that you're going to fail with the next, does it? So if you just got unlucky or the lender had a particularly strict credit check, we can always look at other options again, but providing we've got a kind of a clearer picture of your previous credit history and there are no major issues that we're not aware of. Assuming you do pass the credit check, over to number two. In no particular order. So
these two happen kind of concurrently, don't they? So I would say valuation. So quite often these days, after your mortgage application is accepted, so credit check's done, mortgage application submitted same day, the valuation is often instructed. So the lender, if you're buying, will go and value the new property. If you're remortgaging, they will value your existing home. Now, that may well be them coming out to the property, looking at it and sending a report back to the lender. That may be nowadays an electronic valuation.
We don't really have any choice, do we? The lender will just choose which one they want to do.
Yeah, generally lenders have a certain amount they have to go and value within their risk. But sometimes they will just do it on a computer. Certainly if you've got a lower mortgage and a higher property value, so you've got lots of equity, you're more likely to get one, but
you're a slightly lower risk to the lender.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that will happen first and foremost. Well,
and just to be clear, the mortgage valuation isn't to be confused with a survey. So a survey, which you probably wouldn't do if you were remortgaging, but generally if you're buying a property you might decide to do a private survey where you organise a surveyor to go and have a look at the property, make sure there's no major issues, make sure there's no kind of structural problems, because ultimately you will be taking on the property and any potential problems if there are issues with the property. So a survey is a separate valuation or survey that you can do, which isn't mandatory, and you would have to pay on top for that. Kai is referring to the mortgage valuation, which is a mandatory part of the mortgage process.
Next one.
Leads us on to 3. And like I said, there's no particular order. Sometimes they do the valuation very quickly. Sometimes they hold fire for a few weeks until they've completed the assessment. But number 3.
This is the underwriting. So this is the human trying to back up all the information. So the system's already said yes to you in the first point. Now the human is trying to assess your documents, make sure they all look okay, make sure everything makes sense and it matches.
Matches what we've keyed on the initial application. So when we apply, we'll tell them how much you earn, where you're from, your address, what your credit commitments are, and then the underwriter will go through and make sure that everything adds up. And that will normally be through looking through your documents to make sure that you can actually evidence the information that you've given.
Yeah.
Did I interrupt you there? I feel like you were about
No, I was about to say that.
Okay.
They were checking the
nice
documents.
for me to get a word in.
Yeah.
That's the bit that I think we should just emphasise, that sometimes when people go online and they get an agreement in principle from a bank directly, yes, they've given an agreement in principle, and yes, maybe you've passed a kind of a soft credit check or potentially a hard credit check, but the one bit that you don't get at the start of the process is the case to be underwritten. They won't do that until you've applied. So you just going online, keying your information in and getting an agreement in principle, that's great, but actually you may have keyed something incorrectly, and actually when it comes to the assessment, the underwriter may actually not be happy that the information you've provided is correct, which I guess is one of the benefits of using a broker, isn't it?
Yeah.
We will run those relevant checks before the process to make sure that everything is being presented in the correct way to the lender.
Definitely, yeah.
Once the lender's carried out those 3 hurdles and the time frames from the initial credit check and application to completing the underwriting, the valuation, and then getting your mortgage offer, which means the mortgage has been fully agreed, the time frames can vary drastically. Sometimes the whole thing happens within a couple of days. Sometimes it can take a couple of months. On average, maybe a couple of weeks. But it does vary drastically depending on the lender, depending on your circumstances. If the underwriter comes back with questions, not always anything to be worried about. They're just trying to clarify certain points before they can agree the mortgage. But if they come back with questions, there's a bit of back and forth, which again your broker will normally take care of before they can agree the mortgage. But as we say, once they're all done, you get your mortgage offer.
Yeah, that's your kind of stamp of approval, isn't it?
Yeah, that means the mortgage is agreed.
Done.
Yeah, so unless they pick up something on a background check further down the line or something's changed, it's not a binding document. They can retract the offer if they find out that something's changed, but 99% of the time, once you've got your offer, mortgage is agreed, and then you can go ahead and complete on the mortgage. Offers are normally valid for around 6 months. Check that, it does vary from lender to lender, so as long as you complete within that 6 months, the mortgage can start, and then obviously you get the money and start the new scheme.
And that's pretty much it, I guess, isn't it? That from offer, that the bank are pretty much done, other than releasing the funds.
Yeah.
That the solicitor takes the reins from there and will do what they need to do, be it remortgage or buying. And really, the bank are kind of just waiting for the request for the funds to be released.
Yeah, exactly. But just to simplify, those 3 hurdles: credit check, underwriting, valuation. That's pretty much how every mortgage assessment will be completed. So you pass all 3 of those and you're likely to go on to get your mortgage. So pretty simple. We've touched on this in previous videos, but we just wanted to beef it out a bit more. As always, we are mortgage brokers. We're not YouTubers. So if you need your assistance with a mortgage or you just want to ask us some questions, you can get in touch, head to the website, give us a call, send us an email, or just leave something in the comments and we'll do our best to come back to you. See you next time.